I was about to give up when I asked, God, are you real? It was then that my body trembled and my hair stood on end, and I heard, Yesta. The story you are about to hear is a true account. The names of characters and places have been changed to preserve the privacy of its authors. If you believe in miracles or have experienced one, leave your opinion in the comments and subscribe. I remember it as if it were today, every detail etched in fire in my mind. That bottomless pit of sadness, anger, and desperation that seemed to swallow me completely. I was immersed in darkness so dense that I couldn't even see the light at the end of the tunnel. It was as if I were imprisoned in an emotional dungeon, suffocated by the cold and oppressive dampness that stole the air from my lungs. Each morning upon waking was an endless battle against the internal demons that tormented me relentlessly. Depression was a hungry monster, stealing any vestige of joy and hope that dared to sprout in my heart. It crept silently, an omnipresent shadow that darkened every corner of my life. I remember endless days when I could barely get out of bed, the weight of that shadowy creature holding me to the sheets like invisible chains. Anger, for its part, boiled in my veins, a blind fury that drove me to scream against the unjust world that surrounded me. It was a volcano in constant eruption, spewing flames of resentment and bitterness that burned everything around me. I remember numerous heated arguments with loved ones, where sharp words were thrown like projectiles, wounding and destroying precious relationships. And the desperation. Desperation was the worst of all. It was as if I were trapped in a maze with no exit, struggling to find a path, but being constantly rejected. Every attempt to escape from that tangle of negative emotions was frustrated by dead ends and closed doors. The feeling of helplessness was overwhelming, like sinking in quicksand, each effort to free myself only dragging me further down. In those dark days, I felt like a castaway adrift, clinging to the remains of an emotional shipwreck in search of something, anything, that could save me. My prayers seemed to resonate in the void, like muffled screams in an endless desert. I begged, implored, negotiated with God, but all I heard in response was a deafening silence. I remember one particular night, when the darkness seemed so suffocating I could barely breathe. I was lying in my bed, curled up in a fetal position, hugging my knees against my chest while the icy cold of loneliness warmed me from within. Tears ran freely down my face, forming a salty pool on the soaked pillow. It was in that moment of absolute desperation when I knelt on the cold floor, my trembling legs barely supporting me. With my voice choked by tears, I cried out with all my strength to God, begging for a sign, a glimmer of hope to light my path. God, if you're there, please show me a sign. Give me strength to continue, because I don't know how much longer I can hold on. I'm drowning in this sea of darkness and desperately need a beacon to guide me back to the surface. My cry of desperation echoed off the empty walls of that dark room, and for a moment, all I heard was the deafening silence. But then, something changed. In that dark and lonely room, kneeling on the cold floor, with my tears still running like salty rivers, something extraordinary happened. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. A voice. It wasn't an external voice resonating through the walls, nor was it the familiar murmur of my own conscience. This voice was different, transcendent, as if coming from a parallel dimension, resonating directly in my mind. Soft, but distinct. Ethereal, but undeniably present. Yes. A single word, but with the weight of a cosmic revelation. It was as if that simple monosyllable had torn down all the walls that imprisoned me, allowing a ray of celestial light to penetrate the impenetrable darkness that enveloped me. My heart raced, beating against my ribs like a caged bird desperately trying to break free. My eyes opened wide, frantically scanning the empty room for the source of that ethereal voice. But there was no one else but me. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice choked by the conflicting desperation and hope fighting within me. "Show yourself." Silence. For an endless moment, I was consumed by doubt. Had it been just a cruel trick of my fragile mind? A hallucination brought on by exhaustion and desperation? Then, as if answering my inner questions, the voice returned. this time, stronger, more present, resonating in every fiber of my being. It is I fear not. Those simple words were like a balm for my tormented soul. A wave of comforting warmth coursed through my body, driving away the paralyzing cold that consumed me. For the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of hope ignite within me, a faint but bright flame. Breathless, I dried the tears from my face and lifted my gaze, as if I could see through the veil that separates the earthly and divine realms. God, is it you? My voice failed, reduced to a reverent whisper. The answer came with the softness of a spring breeze, but charged with an undeniable truth that made my soul tremble. Yes, my child, I am here. In that moment, all the doubts, all the fears and insecurities that had corroded my soul for so long dissipated like fog at dawn. A deep, indescribable peace descended upon me, wrapping me in a comforting embrace. Tears of joy sprang from my eyes, sliding freely down my cheeks. I laughed, an uneven laugh that floated between ecstasy and remaining desperation. But above all, I felt a renewal, as if I had just been reborn. That voice, that divine presence, had answered my deepest question. God is real, and He had found me, even when I wandered lost in the densest darkness. In that moment, I felt a wave of relief course through my being, as if a ray of light had pierced the darkness that imprisoned me. From that transcendental encounter, everything changed. The divine voice that resonated in my mind that fateful night was the catalyst for a profound transformation, a true spiritual rebirth. Before that defining moment, I wandered through this world like a ghost, an empty shell of a man tormented by internal demons. Depression, anger, shame, and anxiety were constant companions, tied to me like invisible shackles that kept me prisoner in an endless cycle of suffering. But when God's voice pierced the darkness that enveloped me, it was as if a spark had been lit within me, a faint but incandescent flame, illuminating a path I barely dared to glimpse. I then embarked on a journey of spiritual rebirth, determined to leave behind the shadows that had dominated my life for so long. Each step was a struggle against the specters of the past that haunted me, a fierce battle to free my soul from the chains that imprisoned it. It wasn't an easy journey, far from it. There were moments of desperation, when the darkness seemed to close in around me again, threatening to smother the newly lit flame within me. I remember endless sleepless nights, fighting against the intrusive thoughts that insisted on dragging me back into the abyss. But I persisted, clinging to the promise of that divine voice like a lifeline in a stormy sea. Each morning, I woke with renewed determination to move forward, to face the demons that had tormented me for so long. In the midst of this inner battle, I found strength in unexpected places. Nature became my refuge, a green sanctuary where I could connect with divine creation and find momentary peace. I remember long walks along winding paths, breathing deeply the fresh air laden with the perfume of wildflowers, while allowing natural beauty to wash over my troubled soul. Prayer also became a fundamental pillar in this journey. Kneeling before the Creator, I poured out my heart, exposing my deepest wounds and pleading for healing and guidance. And, incredibly as it may seem, I felt God's comforting presence enveloping me in an invisible embrace, calming my concerns and renewing my strength. Gradually, with each step taken on this arduous path, I felt the chains that imprisoned me loosening. Depression, which had previously suffocated me like a lead blanket, began to lose its oppressive grip. The anger that burned in my veins like incandescent lava cooled, giving way to a deeper understanding. It was a slow and sometimes painful transformation, like the metamorphosis of a caterpillar into a butterfly. But with each obstacle overcome, with each wound healed, I felt my soul expand, gaining wings to fly ever higher. After months of inner struggle, of facing the demons that had tormented me for so long, I felt I was ready for the next step in my spiritual journey. As if guided by a greater force, I found myself irresistibly drawn to the depths of a serene forest, a natural sanctuary where the divine presence seemed to pulse in every leaf, every branch, every ray of sunlight that penetrated the green canopy. It was in this sacred vegetal sanctuary where everything changed. I remember that day with crystal clarity. The fresh morning air carried the invigorating aroma of moss and damp earth, while sunbeams danced among the treetops, creating a dazzling mosaic of light and shadow on the leaf-covered ground. I walked with light steps, feeling the deep connection with nature that had become my balm in the darkest moments. Previous content remains the same. But then, in an instant, everything changed. My foot stumbled on an exposed root and I fell hard to the ground, the impact knocking the air from my lungs. For a moment, I lay stunned, my hands scratched by the rough earth, my knees throbbing with pain. But then, as if moved by a higher force, I lifted my gaze to the canopy above me, where rays of sunlight pierced the foliage in a celestial spectacle. And it was in that instant, while observing the sacred dance of light and shadow, that I felt a deep calling, an overwhelming urgency that transcended mere physical existence. It was as if a wordless voice urged me to act, to seize this moment of vulnerability, to connect with the divine in a way I never had before. Without hesitation, I knelt on the damp forest floor, my hands interlaced in fervent prayer. And then, with every fiber of my being, I cried out to God, pouring my heart out in an unceasing flow of pleas and questions. Almighty God, I am here before you, exposed and vulnerable. Guide me, please, show me the path I must follow. What is your will for me? How can I serve your divine purpose? The words flowed from my lips with a feverish urgency, as if I were unloading all the weight I carried on my shoulders. Hot tears ran down my cheeks, mixing with the damp earth, while my body trembled with the intensity of the emotion consuming me. The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the soft whisper of wind through the leaves. But then, as if in response to my cry, I felt an overwhelming presence enveloping me, a cosmic energy that seemed to emanate from the very earth beneath my knees. A deep peace descended upon me, calming my troubled soul and bringing a serenity I hadn't experienced in a long time. It was as if all my worries and fears had been swept away, leaving only crystalline calm in their place. In that moment, I felt a deep connection with the divine, as if I had been wrapped in creation's own mantle. And although no audible voice resonated, I knew, deep inside, that my prayers had been heard and that the guidance I so desperately sought was about to come. 2 days passed since my profound and cathartic encounter in the forest. The peace and serenity that had descended upon me in that natural sanctuary remained like a protective aura, wrapping me in a comforting mantle of calm even amid life's inevitable turbulence. However, despite this renewed calm, I knew something greater was yet to come. It was as if that moment of divine connection had been merely the prelude to a deeper and more transcendental transformation. And so, on that morning of clear and bright sky, I returned to the sacred clearing in the forest, determined to surrender completely to the divine will, whatever purpose awaited me. With reverent steps, I walked the same winding path that had led me to this place 2 days before, feeling the vibrant energy of nature pulsing around me. Upon reaching the clearing, I knelt at the same spot where I had poured out my heart in fervent prayer. The damp earth seemed to radiate a primordial energy, as if it were alive and breathing in unison with the cosmic rhythm of the universe. I closed my eyes, allowing all my senses to tune in to that sacred place. It was then that it happened. A voice, soft as the morning breeze, but unmistakably distinct from my own consciousness, resonated in my mind. They weren't articulated words, but rather an ethereal chant, a mantra that seemed to emanate from the depths of the cosmos itself. I am healed. I am healed. I am healed. At first, these words seemed to echo softly, like a distant murmur. But then, gradually, they gained strength and volume, until becoming a celestial chorus that resonated in every cell of my being. I am healed. I am healed. I am healed. With each repetition, I felt a wave of revitalizing energy coursing through my body, expelling the last shadows of pain, fear, and darkness that might still dwell within me. It was as if these words were undoing the chains that had imprisoned me for so long, freeing me from all the emotional bonds that had long prevented me from reaching my true potential. I am healed. I am healed. I am healed. A blinding light, yet not dazzling, began to shine behind my closed eyelids. It was an ethereal, transcendental luminosity that seemed to radiate from within outward, banishing all the darkness that had once consumed me. In that moment, I felt a profound transformation occurring within me. All the layers of depression, anger, shame, and anxiety that had accumulated over the years were being stripped away, revealing my true self, a being of light, created in the image and likeness of the Creator. It was as if I had been reborn, emerging from a cocoon of suffering to become a new creature, clothed in a celestial beauty that transcended human understanding. Upon opening my eyes, it was as if I were seeing the world for the first time. Colors seemed more vibrant, sounds clearer, the air sweeter. Everything around me radiated a revitalizing energy, as if creation itself was vibrating in tune with my inner transformation. And it was in that moment of transcendental clarity that I spotted the majestic deer, standing a few meters away, its deep eyes gazing at me with timeless wisdom. It was as if this noble creature had been sent as a divine messenger, a living symbol of the renewal and grace that had just touched me. Tears of joy and gratitude rolled freely down my cheeks as I recognized the profound truth behind this mystical experience. I had been healed, not just in the physical sense, but on a much deeper and more transcendental level. The emotional wounds that had tormented me for so long had finally been healed by divine grace, and I had emerged as a reborn being, ready to embrace life with renewed fullness and purpose. Since that transformative day in the forest, when I experienced the divine healing of body, mind, and soul, my life was never the same. It was as if I had been reborn, emerging from the ashes of my old self to embrace an existence full of light, purpose, and gratitude. The shadows that had consumed me for so long, the suffocating depression, the corrosive anger, the paralyzing shame, and the oppressive anxiety, had been swept away, leaving only a blank canvas where I could paint a new reality, a life renewed by celestial grace. In this new phase, I actively sought to glorify God in every aspect of my journey. Each breath, each step, each decision became an act of worship, an opportunity to honor the Creator who had rescued me from the darkest depths. I remember waking each morning with a heart overflowing with joy, my eyes filled with tears of gratitude. The simple act of existing, of feeling the warmth of the sun on my face and the freshness of the morning breeze, became a celebration of the renewed life that had been granted to me. In my moments of introspection, I reflected on the journey I had traveled, from suffocating desperation to transcendental fullness. It was as if I had climbed a steep mountain, fighting against contrary winds and seemingly impassable obstacles, only to emerge at the summit and contemplate the dazzling view that stretched before me. And so, with a heart full of gratitude, I sought divine guidance in every step I took. Before making any important decision, I would kneel in fervent prayer, surrendering my concerns and yearnings into the Creator's hands, trusting that He knew the way, even when I couldn't glimpse the final destination. Lord, guide me in Your infinite wisdom. Show me the path to follow, for I know Your plans are far greater and more grandiose than I can comprehend with my limited mind. And, miraculously, the answers always came. Not necessarily in the form of an audible voice, but through subtle signs, seemingly random coincidences that fit perfectly together, or simply an inner peace that transcended human understanding. I remember one particular occasion when I found myself facing a seemingly insoluble dilemma in my professional life. I had prayed tirelessly for guidance, but the answers seemed to elude me. Then, in a moment of discouragement, I decided to walk through the sacred forest that had been the scene of my transformation. As I walked along the winding path, allowing the natural beauty to calm my troubled mind, I spotted a small crystalline stream meandering among the trees. And it was there, reflected in the dancing waters, where I perceived the solution I had been seeking. It was as if the universe itself was sending me a coded message, a divine epiphany disguised as natural flow. From that moment on, I learned to trust fully in celestial guidance, even when the paths seemed dark and tortuous. For I knew, in my renewed heart, that God was always with me, guiding my steps toward a greater purpose, a journey of spiritual growth and personal fulfillment. And so, day after day, choice after choice, I allowed my life to become a living testimony of divine grace. Where once there was darkness, now shone an incandescent light, warming not only myself but all those who crossed my path. For I had been truly healed, not just of visible wounds, but of the deeper scars that had corroded my soul for so long. And in this continuing journey of rebirth, I constantly seek to honor the miracle that was granted to me, walking with renewed faith, unshakable hope, and a heart overflowing with love and gratitude for the Creator who rescued me from darkness and brought me into the glorious light of day.